Welcome to the People's Guild.
Each week we explore the Splinterlands universe with guests from all across the mythical land of Praetoria.
Join us on our journey as we discuss the evolution of the game, the strategy, the lore, and the exciting path that lies ahead.
To support the People's Guild, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and also check us out on PeakD, YouTube, and Twitter.
Send your questions, suggestions, and epic battles in our comments through Twitter or email at thepeoplesguildspl@gmail.com. We'll feature the best in our episodes and maybe airdrop you some prizes.
Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the People's Guild. Another week, another episode, another great guest for you guys today. We've been kind of chomping at the bit to get this guest back on the air with us here at the People's Guild for quite some time. He was kind of the Voldemort, he who shall not be named for quite some time in the Splinterlands community, and some things came to pass, and we're moving into a new future here, and we're excited to present this conversation here to you guys today. Real quick acknowledgement to Crypto Eater, Team Aqualis, Push and Shove. Go check out what's happening over there. Some cool stuff. Always trying to push the envelope for the Splinterlands community and upwards and onwards for Team Aqualis and Push and Shove. All right, so without further ado, we've got Syler back. What's up, Syler? Appreciate you taking the time to hop on, man.
Hey, yeah, sure. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, good to have you on. The last time we talked to you, it's interesting. We kind of ended the conversation with talking about how, are you going to get a job with Splinterlands? And you said, I would be interested. We haven't, haven't really reached out to them, or they haven't reached out to me. But if they were interested in, putting some of the stuff you were doing, to work. And so now that's, kind of here. So yeah, I want to know kind of, how did those discussions kind of begin, and what led to, you're getting hired on as part of the team?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. Matt would probably agree that the best person to I should probably give some background first. So I was hired to combat the battle helper issue, basically detect cheating in different forms in the game. And it makes sense that I would be suitable to take that on, given that I made similar tools in the past. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how it started. So we had the proposal first a few months ago about what the rules should actually be. And now they're being enforced. And it just seemed like a good fit that I should give it a shot.
Yeah. So did they reach out to you because they saw some issues, or did you kind of reach out to them to say, hey, I want to help out? How did that sort of get kicked off?
It was mostly Dave who made it happen, Dave McCoy. So he reached out to me and Matt, and he came up with a kind of agreement, I guess, between us, like what I should do, what I should give up, what I should agree on, and what the company will get instead. And we went through a few different options about how I should get hired. I thought it would make sense to get hired by the DAO or get paid by the DAO, because the original proposal to ban battle helpers was a DAO proposal. But as it turned out, Matt just thought it's easier, and I don't know, just made more sense to get hired by the company directly.
Mm-hmm. So what were the things that they kind of said you wanted to give up things? What were some of the things they wanted you to give up and stop, kind of focus on instead?
Well, mostly it is that I guess the way it was phrased is, if you're running any battle helper services, then they must stop as part of the agreement.
Yeah. Was there anything else, discussed in that? What were those negotiations like, kind of back and forth, you said?
I mean, there was some discussion about exactly what I should take on. There was a few different options. in terms of what I'm bringing on as well is like a big part of detecting a cheater is like having access to what they have access to. And that would be pretty challenging for the team to do themselves. They would have to kind of build a bot or like a battle helper from scratch. So what I'm bringing on is like that finished working service, which I can integrate quite easily. Yeah, in terms of what I'm doing, we kind of settled on the cheat detection, or I guess we call it fair play enforcement. And I'm also doing the match liquidity bots. That's kind of been spread to a few different people. I know iProto is doing it, and someone else who I forgot, unfortunately.
Was there any discussion of, you trying to go back and using the skills you had or any other information you had to kind of see who might have been using, a battle helper, prior to your joining the team?
What I'm building would be able to do that. I'm not sure. We're not at that stage yet where we're taking action based on what we're finding. We're still kind of calibrating the system, optimizing it. So it's possible. I'm not. We haven't really talked about it yet. If we want to use it on old battles, I guess.
Yeah, so when I had initially reached out to you, Sylar, I guess it was probably turn of the month, beginning of April. And you were very clearly still in kind of the onboarding stages. And I would guess that means, meeting the team, getting familiar with what's happening where, and kind of growing into your role, so to speak. And obviously it's a brand new role, so a little bit of the opposite I'm sure was happening as well. Do you feel like you've got a pretty clearly defined set of goals, or are you getting do you have a quota for the number of battle helpers that you've got to, pull over and toss in the slammer per month? What does success look like for you at this point?
Success would be to catch all cheaters, I guess. But that's kind of hard to define. I mean, when I joined, I gave the team my ideas of what I think we should do. First, I kind of caught up to what they're doing, what they have done internally so far, and I've proposed what I want to do. So I proposed like 2 different methods of detection. And I'm basically working through those now. I guess it kind of depends on how successful they are. That kind of what it comes down to. It's like if you come up with one method, catches almost everyone, you don't really need more methods at that point, until I guess the cheaters find new ways to get around the system. But yeah, we're just gonna, I guess, we're gonna go as far as is required to catch most people. I think Matt said this. I'm not sure if I want to share that actually. Actually, it's probably fine. Basically, in most games, it doesn't really matter how many cheaters there are. What really matters is the perception about the problem, or how many there are. If you're playing a game and you never think about cheaters, it doesn't really matter if like some of them had a cheater in them. It's more about how you feel about it, right?
Sure. It's I completely understand that sentiment. It's all about the optics. And as Hep alluded to our conversation from last summer, I think we had you on kind of in that weird window of the no bot modern proposal had passed but not yet been implemented. So we were kind of talking about your plans for what does the new modern era look like for Syler and Team Xbot. Yeah, so it's a really interesting topic of defining success and what exterminating cheaters looks like. I think we've had Proto on, we've had Max from Archmage, we've had Almighty Melon on, and of course yourself is on that list as well. And I think it was a couple of you guys that kind of called out success and a win of no bot modern should look like the majority of bots are relegated to wild, where they should be. And I think that's kind of what you're hitting on again, is that, it's really about the optics and what is the feeling that the community is able to draw from battles. As soon as folks start, whispering, oh, there's battle helper going on, or somebody account XYZ is running bots. Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I'm curious, man. We've had a number of guys in the last handful of episodes suggest that bots are inevitable. We're pretty much never going to win that battle. We've heard that from, I'm not even going to start the laundry list of names that have said this over the years since we've all been here. And I think it's kind of the unfortunate truth of what digital gaming is. It's an impossible feat. So, at least in my mind, I'm starting to look at what does the next iteration of combating bots look like, and is that implementing trickier rule sets? Is that items and spells? Is that we had Proto on a couple of weeks ago, and he suggested something along the lines of a trap card where I play this particular card, and if XYZ occurs on the other side of the equation, then it triggers something that, was not accounted for by the opponent. And then Games on the Block suggested something where kind of a rotating rule set of a particular ability being applied to a certain position in the lineup, just to kind of make the calculations more difficult, where surface level for humans, it's pretty easy to wrap our heads around what's happening, but it just adds an exponential number of calculations to the bot side, and therefore perhaps time becomes a factor, and it's an impossibility to churn out a successful team. So do you kind of have ambition, Syler, for your role growing into that sort of approach to combating bots, where you kind of embrace the reality that, hey, we're never going to be able to exterminate these things. Let's do a better job of setting up humans for success through these alternative methods.
Right. Yeah, I watched Games on the Block video and some discussions with him. I think he really boiled it down to the right idea, which is that you want to focus on things that favor humans over bots. It's like if you put a Venn diagram of like what humans are good at, what bots are good at, there must be an area where humans are better, right? Otherwise, they would have already taken over everything. It's a tricky question, like what kind of things are computers not good at solving, right? I don't really have an answer for that. I tried to think of things, but it's a tricky question. So I think one approach, which is not as difficult, is like the idea that Games on the Block proposed, which is like having something rotating, something that changes from every season or maybe every day. That would make a big difference, because current iterations of bots rely a lot on data. I mean, you could create theoretically some sort of AI model that is much smarter and doesn't rely on data as much, and that would kind of get around these types of seasonal differences. But for the current iteration, that would probably be quite effective. Yeah, I mean, my bot for sure relies very heavily on data. If there was some global modifier that is active this week and it has never been active before in the past, I can't rely on my data. Maybe I can't even use it at all. So that would definitely work in terms of giving humans the favor. About your other questions, what I could contribute, it's not really in the scope of my role at the moment, but that is pretty interesting. I think I'm going to think about that a bit more, about yeah, maybe from my perspective, it's a bit easier to come up with these types of mechanics, like game design mechanics, that would make the game more human friendly.
Yeah, like you said, you're the guy who kind of has built these tools to be able to kind of get around, you know, what's being done now. So you would kind of be in a good position to know what would be good to counter those. And one thing I've been thinking about since, we had this discussion, these things are constantly bouncing around my mind and like playing other games and, playing other games, you kind of see the ability to, choose, and these are more like turn-based games, but you can choose, which cards are going to target opponent's cards or which, items or spells you can use to target other people's cards. Do you think that is something which seems like it could be, a simple rule implementation? Like we have the tactics, right? But instead of a summoner tactic, you could have a card tactic where you can say, all right, this card has, it's hard to name the ability because it would be like snipe or something, right? Is what the ability should be, where you say, all right, well, this card is gonna target, the card in the third position. So, and it'd be, that would happen regardless of whether, there's like opportunity or whatever rule set. So, and that way that, the bot wouldn't know, which card the human was going to target. Do you think something like that would be enough to kind of throw it off, a good amount where it's just like, well, all of a sudden my hand is relying on this card to be in there to have this effect, but all of a sudden, that can get wiped out a lot faster by the human player making that selection where the bot wouldn't know, exactly what was going to happen.
Right. That's kind of what I thought the next edition of Land is going to be, like tactics and spells. That's kind of how I imagined they would work. Yeah, I think that would help humans over bots for sure. It's just the next step for the game. I think it was kind of overdue for a long time, I would argue. But some sort of interactivity, more rounds to like have decisions, make decisions, is what the game needs.
In response to my previous question, you kind of said that's not how your role is defined just yet, and it's something that you feel like would be worth your while to put some thought to and possibly pursue with the team, at some point in the future. Do you have ambitions of? I feel like it's a bit of a conflict of interest, right? Because you still have XBot as I would assume a fairly significant chunk of your take home pay, on a monthly basis, and obviously the company is now paying you to defeat your own product. So, right. Two-part question. Number one, is that something that you would feel ambitious to pursue, kind of in the name of a fun challenge, a fun game design equation? And second part of the question is, I'm assuming that there's some protections in what your contract looks like with Steam Monster Splinterlands, that you can't use this information to, directly create the super bot on the other side of the equation at the same time. Yeah.
To the second question, I read through the contract a few times, like twice. I think there are clauses like that there must be. I didn't read it specifically, but it's quite well defined what I can and can't do. So I would expect that's captured. To the first question, I'm definitely interested in that type of stuff. I'm a gamer. Game design is pretty cool. Yeah. I would definitely find it interesting to try to come up with different mechanics for the game. Was there some other questions in that I missed?
I guess the root of the question is the appeal of the game design challenge enough to overcome whatever it would detract from your personal take home via XBot?
I guess that really depends on the specifics. If it's something that makes bots redundant, that's going to be kind of tough pill to swallow if it's going to wipe out XBot. But I was thinking maybe it's more of a compromise where it tilts the the gameplay more in favor of humans without completely destroying bots. That would be kind of more reasonable, I think.
Mm-hmm. Because I think there's always going to, even though, there's always going to be, especially in wild, people are always going to need a bot, right? I feel like in a game like this, you see it where if your people are, traveling or busy, they're going to want to have something that can still run their accounts and use their ECR and earn when they're not able to. But yeah, I know there was, when your hire was first announced, there was some people who were wondering, I think especially the Archmage guys who were wondering, what access to what data you were going to have and whether that was going to give you, an unfair advantage on improving XBot. So yeah, I mean, you said you think stuff like that's in your contract, but I mean, did you not, read the whole contract through or understand fully what you can and can't do? Or what you can and can't access?
I'm not really one to read full contracts and all the terms. I did read it. I did read it, I think, twice. It was more about there was a lot of bits about IP, so I definitely can't use any of the company IP to create my own products. So that probably captures it. Like I can't use company technology to compete with them in any way. I mean, in terms of what they said about kind of giving me privileged access, I think it's a fair point. There is some potential for like abuse, I guess. But it would be quite marginal. So the main thing that I would be able to get an advantage from is the actual gameplay code, as in how the game actually plays out, because that's part of the bot is like a simulator that tells you who would win a specific matchup. All bots kind of use that internally to optimize their teams. And those simulators are not the original. So we kind of have our own that we try to match to the real game. So if I had access to the real engine, I could improve my bot, but it would be marginal. It would maybe be like a 5% boost to performance. It would not be massive. And
yeah, but
I
that's
don't
still,
have access to that.
Some people might think that that's still, 5% might be a lot, if it's that's the difference. But if people are looking at deciding whether I'm going to use XBot or Archmage or Splintermate, having that 5% advantage could be enough. I mean, it's not.
Also, I mean, a 55 to a 60% win rate. That's the difference between, first and 100th on the leaderboard, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's not irrelevant. I was just trying to kind of put it into perspective that it's not going to be like groundbreaking. It's just going to make everyone else obsolete, and XBot is going to be just so far dominant. Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe I'm giving you a little bit too much credit here, Syler, but I'm assuming that you didn't bother reading the fine print maybe as clearly as maybe you would have needed to give a very black and white answer there because you have no ill intent. Is that a fair assumption there?
Yeah. I mean, I would be worried if they gave me too much access because that's just bad practice from a company perspective. So yeah, I don't intend on even trying to get access to that stuff.
Yeah, so I'm curious, Syler, with the, I want to circle back to the optics segment of the conversation. And I don't know if you're at liberty to speak to this at all, but do we have any idea what does the current bot population in Modern look like? I think I've got an account in Silver, and I think I'm sitting maybe 2,000 something on the leaderboard. So I'm assuming maybe there's 1,000 accounts behind me, 1,500 accounts behind me, and obviously 22,000, 2,500 something in front of me. So all said and done, maybe less than 4,000 accounts battling in Modern. Do we have any idea what the current population of bots and or battle helping accounts looks like in that population?
I can't speak to battle helpers yet. I should be able to soon. But when it comes to bots, I've been briefed on what's been done currently for bots, and it's way more than I expected. The team has done a really good job at detecting bots, and they have many different things in place. So I mean, if it comes to me, I would say modern bots are not a problem. It's just not an issue. If there are some, it's probably less than 1% of the players. And those 1% are not going to be they're not going to be a massive problem. They're not like big accounts at the top of the leaderboard, like very obviously just taking everyone's money. If there are some around, they're kind of like small operations, trying things out, flying under the radar.
So this is something too, the team hasn't been very, I don't want to say forthcoming, but they just haven't sort of released this publicly to my knowledge about, how many, or something like something they talk about on a regular basis, how many bots they have identified in modern and how many accounts they have sort of suspended or banned. So, I mean, or do you know if there is a substantial number that they have identified, or is it more you think that the tools they have in place are good to potentially identify any bots?
I don't know the exact numbers. They caught the majority of bots at the beginning. So when the modern human only format was introduced, they kind of set up a trap for like a month or so before it was implemented, where they started flagging people and accounts, and that caught an unreasonably high number of people, including all my accounts. Yeah, so they were quite effective at keeping modern bot free.
So you have some personal experience that they were effective at being able to do it.
Yeah, I was not happy about that.
That experience. So obviously your accounts got caught red-handed. What does the banning process look like? And I'm assuming that your accounts were banned from modern. I don't think there's ever been anything publicly disclosed around what happens once you do get caught. What do your assets just go to the furnace and you say goodbye to everything? You get a little chunk of DEC, or are you just relegated to wild indefinitely? What does that process look like? And are we planning on making some stricter repercussions for folks that are caught cheating moving forward? What does that look like?
Currently, there's only one type of ban, as far as I know, which is that you can only play in wild format, wild ranked. So you get restricted from the human only formats. There's no further restrictions at the moment, as far as I know. Just to clarify, so my accounts, they were running in modern while it was still allowed. I didn't run them there after the ban, but they were still getting flagged and banned because of that. The process is, there's no process. You just get banned. If they detect you, then your account just can't play anymore, and you don't even find out until you try to play a modern battle, and it doesn't work.
Okay, so was it some sort of thing where you kind of like logged into them and all of a sudden you saw, or did you see, that they weren't playing or they weren't running, and you had to go in and try to see what was going on, and that you saw that you were restricted from modern?
Yeah, I tried out a few. After the ban went through, I tried to log in, and you get a pop-up that your account is banned from modern.
Is it a clever GIF that pops up with Aggie's face like breaking through the wall like the Kool-Aid man? Like you're banned.
Let me see what I can do about that. We should have that.
That would be pretty cool. Sorry to cut you off, Hep. Go ahead, man.
No, I just wanted. So when you're saying that they were like running things to kind of figure out and detect them, so you're saying that even before the switch went in place, they were, running things to detect bots so that they were kind of ready to go on day one.
Yeah. That's the part that I was not happy about, because technically they didn't really follow the rules with that, because people got banned who didn't break the rules. I never ran my bots in modern when it was not allowed, but I'm still restricted from it. So I guess they just wanted to, like, I don't know what you call it, like catch more than really they needed to, and anyone else who it's like a false positive, they will just create a ticket and they will get unbanned.
But they were the bots you had were up and running though, right? So like if they hadn't been banned, they would have been playing in modern past that threshold.
No, they
Correct or
never
no?
played. They never played in modern when it was
Yeah.
not allowed.
And is that because well, that's because they got banned before, right? Or
I guess they were never able to break the
yeah.
rules, but they shouldn't have been flagged because they never played in modern when it was not allowed.
Is there any talk around, you know, it sounds like there's been a substantial number of bans that have been handed out. You're the first person that I know of to put your hand up and say, yeah, some of those accounts were mine. And it sounds like unjustified, but nonetheless, you're the only person that I'm aware of that has said that they've had an account banned. So is there any plan to kind of make this a little bit more, you know, are we putting folks front and center and tar and feather and hanging them on the stock sort of thing, or is it always going to be this hush hush behind the curtain, just submit a pop-up and you're forever relegated to wild? Is there any plan to kind of heighten the consequences by way of, you know, revoking access to soulbound cards that were earned or anything like that? I'm just curious, you know, do we need to dial up the severity and set a harsher precedent for folks on a moving forward basis? I have to imagine that folks are kind of constantly in pursuit of a workaround. And until we make kind of that public stoning, I'm just wondering if, you know, there has been a precedent set yet to kind of curb that behavior.
Right. I've put some thought to it. I mean, when it comes to Battle Helper, I might, depending on the results we see, I might suggest that we do implement harsher penalties. It depends on what kind of behavior we see in the community. So if an account is mostly renting cards in SPS and they get banned, they will have kind of like a built-in penalty because they won't have access to the remaining time that they rented their cards and SPS. So they're getting punished just through the mechanics of the game. If someone owns their cards and they get banned and the SPS, they don't really lose anything except for the soulbounds, but they can be somewhat negligible. So if we do see that people, you know, they get banned, they move around their assets on their account, they just do the same thing again. If we do see that behavior, I would suggest that we put in some extra penalties. Doesn't have to be too drastic. I was thinking something like, if you get banned, your cards get frozen for like a month, so you can't transfer them. Something like that.
So is that something that the game has the ability to do?
I mean, there is a card freezing feature, right? I've never used it, but you can lock your cards for like a month or so, and nobody can move them. So you could just kind of trigger that for someone. It's more about just the incentivizing the behavior.
Yeah. We talked too about the optics and that people want to, feel like there's, things being done and that the modern format is a safer place to play. And so, but is there, has there been any discussion about whether, like, kind of what Django said, are they going to make any of this stuff more public? Because it all kind of seems like it all happens behind the scenes. And, is there going to be any sort of public acknowledgement of, yeah, this person has been, or this account has been, we've caught this account. So, not to like necessarily be publicly shaming people, but so that people know that, yeah, we're working on this. This is, this problem and we're being successful. And here's the actions that we're taking.
Mm-hmm. I think there's upsides and downsides to that. I've seen in some games that they do publicly announce these things. The last one I played was Escape from Tarkov. Don't know if you've heard of that. They have a huge cheating problem. It's like a first-person shooter, very realistic game, and they periodically release a list of thousands of names that were banned. And I think they do it because the community generally thinks that they're not doing anything about it. Some people think that they actually encourage bots because if they get banned, they create new accounts, buy the game again, that creates more income for the company. So I think they do it for optics. But generally speaking, I would say it's not something you want to be talking about, kind of bringing attention to. The game should be about having fun and just enjoying the game. The cheating aspect is an annoying part of the game that you generally don't want to kind of put extra attention to.
Well, it does certainly feel like it's very much double-edged sword, right? You know, especially at this time in Splinterlands life where we're you know, really focusing on player experience, really focusing on new player experience. Medium to longer term, we're looking to bring in a bunch of new players, do the marketing, do the advertisement, bring on you know, a CMO, chief marketing officer, all that sort of stuff. And to have this thing kind of flaring up in the already existing community, and it's, you know, you one or two scrolls in name your Discord channel, and anytime there's bots or battle helpers mentioned, you know, the sky is falling, right? It's really easy to find the lightning rod that is bot and battle helper conversation throughout Discord. And yeah, certainly a double-edged sword. But you know, I'm really excited about the concept of moving past bots. And you know, I'm going to circle back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier with, you know, taking the game design approach to battling bots. Is that something, you know, you responded that bots in their current iteration would not be able to cope with these sorts of designs, and I would guess that it would be, you know, perhaps you can confirm this for us, Syler. It would not be just one of these instruments that is pulled to kind of give humans the advantage. It would be a combination of, you know, a few of these things, you know, working in conjunction with one another to really make the difference for humans versus bots. How financially feasible would it be for, you know, somebody like yourself or team Archmage to fine tune their bots to the next level of, you know, that sort of AI level thinking that wouldn't require the battle history, it wouldn't require the existing data? Is that something that, you know, are we just digging ourselves a deeper grave?
Yeah, I think these things usually depend on the size of the game. A game like chess, because it's massive, has a huge community, so people will go through the lens of creating a very sophisticated tool. I think at the size of Splinterlands right now and the potential earnings of a bot developer or cheat developer, it's not feasible. Building an AI, I'm guessing it would be some sort of neural network architecture, maybe something like using Monte Carlo trees, quite complicated stuff. Whereas the current system, it's more or less a huge database of teams sorting through them. It's like a search, basically, the current system. You've got a huge space of possible teams, find the best team in that thing. It's basically a search, which makes it so much easier. But an AI approach is vastly different. I would say if I had like a team of another 2 people, we were like 3 of us, it would probably still take us at least a year to come up with a system like that.
And then, yeah, then even to run it, all right, you've got to, you know, the processing power you have to rent out to run that every month is probably would make it difficult to have that be cost efficient, right?
Possibly. Depends on the architecture. Some language models, they're expensive to train, but once they've been trained, they are quite cheap to run. So depends.
I mean, I would guess at the point where this becomes a viable option for bot providers, that would also mean the team and the community was in a much better position to implement the sort of counterbot measures a la chess.com. I would guess, you can't have one without the other. Is that kind of a fair assumption? I know nothing about the development and what, sort of technical resources would be required to implement either of these things. But I would assume that if the player base was massive enough and the rewards were valuable enough for somebody like Xbot or Archmage to deem, this sort of AI approach to botting and or battle helping a viable and cost-effective product, then the team would also be in a much better position to implement appropriate countermeasures. Is that a fair assumption of what that would look like?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, we have a huge advantage that we're like a modern game. It's not like chess where the game doesn't change. You can't do anything to make the game more difficult for bots or anything. So yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. As the game grows, both sides will kind of bolster the systems. Yeah, I'm not sure if there is such a mechanism that it just can't be solved by a program. I kind of tend to think that pretty much everything can be done with AI or programs. We're kind of doomed in general.
Yeah, and in chess, right, you don't have the issue. Splinterlands is kind of unique where with the DAO and with people holding assets, certain people with more assets or more influential and more consequential in their participation in the game, right? And chess isn't like that. So, how do you feel about that? Where there's, is there going to be different treatment for people who, maybe are bigger stakeholders in the game, then that's not really an issue in chess because, everybody kind of got the same stakes?
I didn't quite get the question. Sorry.
Oh, so do you think that, it'll be more of an issue and more, introduce more complications into the detection and enforcement of these issues with a game like Splinterlands, where sometimes people violating these rules are also like big stakeholders in the game or in the DAO and have like more influence over the game and the community than in something like chess, where everybody sort of there's no sort of like that issue, right? There's no sort of like personal stakes involved. No one's more important to chess necessarily than anyone else. Whereas in this game, we have something a little different.
I think Magnus Carlsen would like a word, Hep.
Yeah.
if he got caught cheating on chess.com, I think that would probably be the best marketing chess.com could ever ask for, actually.
Yeah, it does make it complicated when there's money involved. I mean, real world assets. I would never condone taking away someone's assets. The day you freeze someone's cards, NFTs, they're not NFTs anymore. That goes against the whole system. Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason why there hasn't been any action taken on previous offenders. That's part of it. Like, people are very invested in the game, even if they're doing something wrong. They still like the community. They care about the game. They just kind of figured out that this is the best thing to do for them. Yeah, it's complicated.
Do you feel like, so once the announcement came out that Syler was officially part of Team Steam Monsters, I personally noticed a number of kind of key accounts very swiftly fall like a ton of bricks from the leaderboard. Do you think there was, was that front running your position and the quote unquote witch hunt for battle helpers that was coming? I mean, do you have a hunch as to what may or may not have disturbed the leaderboard in such a fashion?
Yes, there's probably some front running going on. I think a lot of people were being very obnoxious about it. Like, they had the tools, they had the helpers, and they were just using it every battle, every match, every tournament. And it was pretty obvious at a certain point who is using and who isn't. So they've probably just scaled it back. You can blend in, like a cheater who tries to be smart about it and fit in, not stand out, they're very difficult to spot. Whereas someone who is just doing it religiously, like no care in the world about who's watching them, it's much more obvious. So I think they basically they changed their strategy to blend in.
So you mentioned earlier, Syler, that you were feeling fairly confident in your ability to begin effectively identifying battle helping accounts in the short term. Do you kind of have a ballpark in terms of, are we talking tomorrow morning you're going to wake up and start shooting folks down, or are you a couple weeks away? What does that time frame look like for you? And I guess how close to that final calibration process are you?
Yeah, so for some context, I started around 2 weeks ago. So still quite fresh. I would say progress has been going pretty well. A lot of the basic infrastructure has been set up, like to be able to monitor the results of the tool, the detection tool. So a lot of the groundwork has been laid. We've started analyzing results. So there is something in place already where we are looking at players and their battles, and we are analyzing them for patterns, let's say. I can't say too much about what we're looking at and how we look at it, but analysis has already started. The tricky thing is about, well, how do you know if this indicator that someone is cheating, if this actually means anything, or if maybe the average player just looks like that? So you have to calibrate the system, get to grips with what does the average player look like, and then you can spot the outliers. In terms of timelines, I would say weeks, not months.
Separating the average players from those that are a little bit above average. But you also just said, kind of like, oh, people may be trying to blend in a little bit more. So is that, how do those two things kind of weigh against each other? Where is it people are just going to, if you think someone's like using it, but also using it in a way that makes them look like an average player, is there still ways to detect that? Or is that something that, it's going to be harder to detect? And, maybe it's, well, if they're still just sort of getting the win rate of an average player, what's the difference?
Yeah, I would say they might still slip up, make a mistake. Maybe they're in a big tournament and they just get greedy and they will just use it 3 times in a row and it will stick out. So they might make mistakes. If they're going through so much effort to blend in, they're probably not that big of a problem. As in, if they're adjusting their win rate to be that of an average player, they are basically an average player.
But at that point, what's the purpose of employing a battle helper, right? Like in my mind, I would cheat if it granted
maybe you're
me
inherently a below average player. You should know this, Jangles.
Yeah, how'd you do in that last tournament, asshole? Oh man. But you know what I mean? Like if
no,
I
get
had
it.
access to
No.
if I had
just can
access
never
to a battle
resist taking
helper,
a shot at you, even though it's
well,
always
how the tables have
uncalled for
turned,
and
bro.
never true. So yeah.
I mean, if I had access to a battle helper, I would be renting every single gold foil that I had access to on the modern market, and ripping every last bit of SPS out of those gold foil tournaments that I possibly could. Otherwise, I just don't understand what is the purpose of hiring a battle helper, right? I mean, we've all seen the whispers, we've all seen the messages. It's a monthly subscription, so to speak, to have access to some sort of battle helper. So what do you have any insight, Syler? What would be the purpose of hiring a battle helper if you're not going to abuse hiring a battle helper? At that point, is it purely a learning tool?
It could be
to eventually wean off of a battle helper. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I'm not sure how many people are doing that. Probably not that many. But you could argue that, someone maybe they bought a bunch of new cards, maybe all of their cards are kind of fresh, and they want to figure out some strategies. So hey, let me see what the bot would play, and I'll memorize it. Yeah, I mean, there isn't that much reason to use a battle helper at that point.
Yeah.
It's mostly to extract more. So
You mentioned that you're looking at the behavior, the psychology behind the moves, which I think is a fascinating approach, and that's one that I know chess.com uses specifically in its ability to detect cheaters. Is how many consecutive moves are being made that 99.9% of the human population we know for a fact would never consider.
Mhm.
Is that a reasonable approach? I mean, is that something that we can do at scale, and are we employing that? Like I just said, I would specifically target the gold foil tournaments. They're by far and away the most lucrative. It's the biggest bang for your buck in terms of time.
Mhm.
In 2 days, I can pretty much clear an entire season's worth of SPS if I'm victorious with one or two of these gold foil tournaments. So are you keeping a particular eye on those behaviors in subsets of battles, i.e., gold foil tournaments, tier 5 brawls, or are you kind of just keeping a keen eye across the board?
Yeah, we are fragmenting things in some way. Not quite to that detail. But thanks for the idea. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's how you would do it though. Those tournaments, they pay for everything, the
Oh yeah.
subscription fee of the bot and all your losses from everything else combined.
Yes.
In terms of what you said about, how in chess.com, they're basically looking at like optimized moves, let's call them, and comparing them against the player. That's the basic approach. Yes. You want to find out how consistently strong a player is. Then you find a baseline of what an average player is. Maybe you have like a band of like below average player, above average, and if anyone is like way above the above average for a long time, that gives it away. We do have those tools to make that kind of analysis similar to chess.com.
Got you. So time is the X factor. Like I'm a decent player, and every once in a while I might play the perfect hand. Most of the time I'm going to play the dog shit hand that doesn't get the very clean sweep, but I might scrape away a victory on my last dodge sort of thing. But it sounds like we're looking at consistency in terms of these behaviors versus one-offs, and I would guess that that's also true with if we've got I don't know, a 30 mana odds only Earth is the only available Splinter Magic only rule set. Odds are we're all going to play the same lineup in maybe a variation of positions. So something like that is not going to set off the red alert that, hey, B Jangles is cheating. Come check out this account. But a series of battles like that where sky's the limit, standard rule set, 6 elements on the board, 99 mana, that sort of stuff where you're generating the perfect lineup time after time is the type of scenario that you guys are looking into specifically.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, bots don't make mistakes, or they very rarely do. They've got their logic, it's pre-built, and they just in terms of numbers, a bot will probably find the 1 percentile of best teams every single time, whereas a human will never do that.
It's interesting because this was probably, over a year ago when there was issues with certain players who people thought were using some sort of battle help or bots and in tournaments, and they kind of came out and said, no, I just play the game a lot. I have these different spreadsheets laid out with, if it's this mana and rule set, like I look at these options. So, how do you kind of separate that or distinguish that? Sort of what is, and then we talked about this too with the terms of service before and what they're at now. And there was, issues with arguments about what things actually certain things meant. So sort of what is, your definition or how the team is defining what is a quote unquote battle helper and what is not. And, what falls, within, crossing the line as opposed to, no, this is acceptable.
Mm-hmm. I believe it says it in the terms of service. It's basically the suggestion of a lineup or a team that is not allowed. So in theory, I think it's allowed to like suggest a card. Like maybe a tool can tell you, oh, in this battle, consider using this summoner. That's probably fine. But I think what crosses the line is when it gives you the solution, the full team.
So, well, if it says a team, so then if we've got, what was it, 5 or 6 cards in a team and a summoner? So if it gives you a summoner and 5 cards and you have to figure out the last card to play, is that not a battle helper?
Yeah, it's a gray zone, right? I would say it still is. Yeah, I'm not sure how to define it.
So I mean, but it's also like, right, if it says, well, this is the full team, right? So like if they just tell you the 6 cards to play and you got to figure out the summoner on your own, is that not a battle helper?
And card number 6 rhymes with Sanka. I mean, it feels like that's such a silly gap, right? Like why leave anything open to interpretation? Why do we not have a very black and white terms of service? I think that's exactly what got us into this whole thing anyways, right? Was the initial terms of service. I think Matt called it out in the town hall that we weren't specifically prohibiting service providers, but we were prohibiting users of said services, right? So why not sew this thing up with a nice bow and make it very black and white what is and what is not a battle help, right? I just don't understand. What is that a failure on our part, or is it actually a much more difficult definition to construct than it seems?
I think there are some definitions that would capture all of it, but you run the risk of banning things that you don't want to ban. There are some websites out right now that give you sort of statistics about win rates based on different things. So if you make it so any suggestion about what you could play in a certain thing is not allowed, that would just ban almost everything or a lot of things.
Yeah, but those things are sort of things you look at, not maybe you can look at them in the middle of a battle, right? But if just say a win rate for a card is just an overall general statistic of all battles in general, right? It's not like, hey, here's your specific rule set. You're in a match trying to set your team, and this is the card you should play, or a couple cards you should play. Like that. That's a big difference, right?
Or wouldn't it be much easier to just whitelist, blacklist everything, and then toss a handful of service providers on the whitelist? If there's cards that are suggested based purely upon win percentage in particular rule sets, or whatever the mana caps, whatever the case is, just get those on a list and house everything under Peak Monsters or Splinterlands.com or whatever. And Bob's your uncle, right?
Yeah, that's one approach. You could also whitelist everyone and then blacklist some others. I think Matt just really likes the idea of having an open environment where everyone can participate. Yeah, different methodologies.
Syler, how much do you liken your position to that of an advisor or consultant versus are you just doing what you're told sort of thing? Are you, you were obviously hired, you're good at what you do. Um, do you feel like the team is adequately leaning on you for that expertise? Do you feel like you're, being prompted and your voice is heard when you're offering suggestion, or are you still kind of feeling out what that role looks like for you?
I would say so far the team has been quite receptive. I mean, obviously they push back, but more or less they kind of relying on my experience with the topic to kind of make decisions.
Syler, I'm wondering your contract with Splinterlands, is that sort of, are you sort of an at-will employee, or are you sort of there until they say, no, thanks, we don't need you anymore? Is this like a year-by-year thing? Is there a set time, and then they say, well, we'll see what happens and look to renew it? How permanent do you feel this position is, and based on those sort of things?
Ooh, hard to say. So I'm a contractor. I'm not an official, I guess, team member. So I'm kind of my scope is more limited. Like I'm here to do one or two things, let's say. After that, it's kind of unclear. So, I mean, to me, it doesn't feel that permanent, I've got to say. So, I would like to continue. I'm kind of already sketching some things out that I might be able to approach after I finish the fair play stuff. But yeah, we'll see.
Okay, so is it like they're kind of contracting you? We want you to build out, these tools to help us with this fair play aspect, and then that's sort of the limit of your employment with them at this point.
Yeah.
And so how long do you think that's gonna be? And then, sort of, because I know like you're focused on XBot, full time. So now are you kind of like part time on both? And will you move back to XBot kind of full time after, you think if things don't kind of proceed with your employment at Splinterlands?
XBot hasn't been really taking up my time for a long time now. It's a part-time job at most. Sometimes it's not a job at all. Yeah, so the time-wise, it's fine. I don't really have to struggle too much with allocating time. XBot is just running by itself at this time.
We talked a good deal last episode with you, Syler, about things like Golem Overlord and some of these other games that are popping up on Hive from folks that are connected to the community. And I think it was Hep that asked you about designing your own game, and I think you responded pretty cut and dry that it wasn't something you were necessarily immediately interested in, but who knows what could come up in the future. Do you feel like this opportunity does this kind of scratch that itch for you? And you say that you're kind of in the process of sketching out what a role longer term and in a more permanent capacity with Splinterlands could look like. Is it something in that vein, in pursuit of game design, or do you want to get involved with UX UI stuff? I'd just be keen to hear, what is it that you feel like you would be happy to contribute to the team longer term?
One potential way of doing it is like bringing more of the automation side into the game. I've seen ideas thrown around that we should have automation built into the game. I quite like that idea. So if maybe there's more support for that, I could help with it. I could also do more things like on the data side. So what I've already built at XBot is like a lot of analytics into what cards you're playing, how you're performing in different rule sets, mana brackets, all sorts of things. Or like maybe giving some suggestions into how you could improve your collection, maybe bring some of those tools in the game. Well, I guess kind of other topics, I'm quite flexible when it comes to what I could do. I built all of XBot myself, so I can kind of tackle things and systems from most angles, like whether it's the back end, the algorithms, the server management, the front end development. I can do quite a bunch of like weird different things. Yeah, so I'm quite open. I think what I would like to do the most would be like a new game mode for the game, implementing the code for it. Design I could do, but I think there's better people who can come up with the design. But I could do like the front end or back end parts of a new game mode.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll have to get you back on it if and when we're able to cross that bridge and get some new game modes on. There's a certain someone we hosted last week that was pretty vocal about his desire for some new game modes to come into Splinterlands, and he would be certainly stoked to hear about it as well as a whole bunch of other folks in the community. I think that's why we're getting Splinter Royale and Splinter Forge and Splinter something. It feels like there's a million different kind of offshoots of what Splinterlands is doing. But man, something that I would really, really love to see be brought in game from Casa de Xbot is the battle vision function. We had Truls on, gosh, I guess probably about 6 weeks ago at this point, and Mondroid immediately after that, and both of those guys use battle vision religiously, and they're both well respected as great players on competing for leaderboard season in, season out. And yeah, I'd really love to see that sort of stuff that doesn't necessarily enhance gameplay, but it certainly improves gameplay, and it gives food for thought. And if we were able to kind of expand battle vision to more of a sandbox type environment, if I lose this battle, my percentage was 40% to the victor's 60%. Well, let me retool my team a little bit and then replay the battle and watch what would transpire. Yeah, I feel like that would be a really, really fun learning tool that could be brought into Splinterlands. I don't know if there's potential for something like that to get abused and generate artificial data. But obviously you wouldn't be able to manipulate mana cap or rule sets. You're playing within the confines of those parameters. But yeah, I feel like that would be something that I would really love to see be brought to under the Splinterlands umbrella.
Yeah. I guess there's two different ideas there related to that. One is like a sandbox mode, which I would attribute the reason why a lot of people, I would say the average skill level in the game hasn't really changed at all. People are not getting better at the game. And I think that's partly because there is no sandbox mode. In a lot of competitive games like CSGO, League of Legends, whatever, there's a mode where you can just practice. You can go and practice your aim or maybe practice movement, whatever it is. We do need that kind of if the game wants to be competitive. What I've kind of struggled with when I was trying to learn the game is like I would love to play the same thing again and kind of figure out what works, because if you want to figure out like a certain combination between cards, maybe the interaction between two different skills, you might try it out and it fails, and you're not going to see that combination again in like 50 battles, and by then you're not learning, right? Yeah, so just kind of being able to concentrate on a certain concept and then do it again and again until you figure it out. I think what could also help with that is a PvE mode or like a story mode. So you have like, I don't know, 10 steps for one level, and at each level the rule set and mana is kind of predefined, and even what the opponent plays is predefined, and you're just trying to beat through it, right? You can try again and again until you find a combination that works. That helps you get better at the game, learn the game, and it's just like a fun PvE mode.
Yeah, I mean, especially now that they took the card caps out of ranked play, but they're still there in tournaments and brawls, right? And so I've been trying to do some more, tournaments and stuff because of that, because I enjoy playing at the gold level cap, but it's hard. It's hard to just like jump into a tournament or jump into a brawl, and now you're playing with, a completely different rule set that aren't really, used to playing with, because I can't play that in ranked, right? Even though most of my cards are still at a gold cap level, when I'm playing them up against max decks. So I now am developing knowledge about how they perform against max level cards, but I'm not developing knowledge how they would perform against gold level cards, right? So I might figure out a really cool combination and a mono set that works really well, but I'll never know because I'm going up against max level cards. So that kind of makes it difficult. And it just feels like, even with like sort of the argument, well, if you want to be able to play at these levels, like that's why we have tournaments and brawls still. But it's like, it's hard to just kind of jump into those where you say there's no way to like learn or get better at them, really, because it's such a limited amount that you get to play in that, and you don't get to really try new things out.
Yeah, I mean, currently, if someone new joined the game, what would you tell them how to play the game? You play ranked, right? That's what you do to learn. That's what you do once you've learned the game. It's just what you do. There needs to be a bit more kind of tailored game formats for people.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say, one thing too, like we were talking about games on the block earlier, and some of the suggestions he made, and how do you feel about when we were talking about integrating different things into the game and things you would be able to do? What's your opinion kind of on, as someone like as kind of a gamer, as the ability to kind of see when you have a rule set, the game would, give you suggestions. Maybe it's not, obviously not full team suggestions, but something along the lines where showing you metrics where, okay, in this rule set or in this monocop, like most people play, or this splinter, or the most successful splinter would be this. Do you think that's something that would make the game too easy, because then people would just, lean on that too much? Or would it be, well, no, you could kind of look at that and see, if thinking about if your opponent's going to play that, how you would counter it, just sort of from a gameplay aspect? Do you think that would be something that would be good to have in the game and would help kind of balance it out more, because people who didn't have a battle helper or bot, or would be kind of having more on an even playing field because they have more of that information that wouldn't be previously available to them?
Mm-hmm. I think there is some similar things like that on third-party websites. I like the idea. I think it makes it more interesting if you have some more data to go off of in your battles. I know right now they have like the 5 recent battles from your opponent, but I don't think that gets used too much. Yeah, I think that would be interesting. You just got to be careful that you don't recreate the same situation with battle helpers, where using the tools is better than not using them.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's just a hand-holding part of the experience from novice to silver or something like that, and then you're kind of pushed out of the nest, so to speak, and on your own. I want to go back to the
that, like, you could pay the game to give you, right? Like, we talk about getting team income for the game. Maybe that's part of, battle pass situation where, all right, well, yeah, you can kind of get this suggestion if you want. And maybe there's something where, well, if you have this turned on, it'll maybe you earn less SBS multiplier or something. There's some sort of penalty too, right? So, yeah, I mean, right? But these are things that, like, the team clearly needs to find new ways to make revenue. Like, this is, this could be a good one.
Well, bringing Battle Helper into the banner of Splinterlands would be that'd be an interesting one. I think a lot of folks would take a cut on their SPS earnings to in the name of upping that win rate.
Well, apparently just suggesting a summoner or splinter isn't technically a battle helper, so
yeah, circle back to that terms of service, man. Hep, you need to put your that law degree to work and send Matt a firmly worded cease and desist on sending out gray terms of services. Yeah, I want to circle back to the removal of league caps on card Syler. Does that make it easier for bot and battle helper detection? At quick glance, it feels like it would. If a gold deck is outperforming and cruising through diamonds, obviously going up against max decks, that's a clear outlier, right? I would guess that anything less than a max deck that is performing at a higher level would be, kind of immediately raise some flags.
Interesting thought. No, we're not really looking at that yet. I have to think about that if that really works. About the change though, I'm kind of against it. I don't think it's really working out as intended. In terms of detection, that's one question, but the effect that it had on bot farms was pretty massive. It just made them a lot more effective and profitable, which, yeah, kind of seems weird. I mean, we've been trying to tackle the issue of extraction and large numbers of accounts, and then you just give them a lot more earnings. Just didn't make sense to me.
You think just because they're able to play lower cards up into higher leagues?
Yeah, and they also removed the low-level card penalty.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty massive. So yeah, I don't have any exact numbers, but I would say a couple multiples. The earnings have increased for bot farms.
So I don't think it's any secret that the experiment is failing in both modern and wild, and they're on opposite ends of the extreme. Let's focus on the modern half of the equation first. Are you of the same opinion that it's failing?
Yeah, I think that's objectively true.
Okay. That's what I was hoping you would say. So what is the solution in your minds? You've obviously got a little bit of a game design background. You've worked in dev for quite some time. I'm sure you've got an opinion on what we could and should do. Is the solution greater volume of players?
It's a solution. I mean, conceptually speaking, if you're designing a system like this, it should work in almost all circumstances, right? So the fact that in a current demographic and a current situation, the system doesn't work kind of leads me to think that the system is fundamentally somewhat flawed. But yes, I think the problem would more or less be solved if you have more players, which is why Matt is bringing on match liquidity bots to basically kind of even out the playing field. Yeah, the problem is it's the effect of not having that many players, and also you've kind of polarized the player base between wild and modern. So you get a lot of empty or low value accounts in wild, and you have a lot of almost maxed out decks in modern. And that's kind of almost intentional, given the distinction between the two, between what's allowed in each format and how much you get in them. As in, like, if you have a maxed out deck, you're probably going to want to extract as much as possible from modern because that's where the rewards are the highest. So you get more of them over there. Yeah, it's just kind of unfortunate.
Put the league caps back in, or is that something that you think, well, no, we've kind of moved beyond that, and now we just need to find a way we broke something, and so now we need to find a way to fix it a different way? Or why not just put the league caps back in and go back to the card penalties that we had before?
You could. I think that really depends on Matt. It's tricky, right? Because when you're moving in a certain direction, and I think it's the right direction. I think that the changes are generally going in the right direction, but sometimes you kind of get worse results by implementing something. So then it's like, should we roll it back, or should we try to fix the new problem with some new solution? Should we rethink the whole thing? And then if you're going back, it's always like, okay, if we just spent a month of developer time on this, and we're just going to go back to where we were, it feels wasted. Kind of
But that's like sunk cost
discouraging.
fallacy, right? Like, well, we spent a month of developer time on this and it didn't work out. So now we're going to spend 3 months of developer time, coming up with solutions and fixing it. Whereas if we just rolled it back, then we could maybe move on to things that are, you spend that time on things that'll be better used, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would probably roll it back. I kind of think that the recent changes to ranked, while they might they have good intentions, maybe they will eventually go towards something better. I just don't think that's the focus right now. Like, if you took a poll of the community and you were like, before the recent rank changes came in, what's the biggest thing? What's the biggest problem? What should we improve? Would that many people say that the ranked system needs an overhaul? I don't feel like many people thought that.
I think the biggest problem was just the rating, right? I feel like we swung the pendulum so far in the other direction, removing leagues, removing levels of card limitations, implementing a new rating system. I feel like it could have been a much more gradual, targeted process, and maybe adjusting the rating system would have hushed all the grumps in the crowd, and when you're battling on that last day fighting for leaderboard and you come up against somebody who's 300 rating below you and all of a sudden you drop 40 points and you're out of leaderboard position, well, you're obviously going to be upset, but you know what I mean. So maybe it could have been a very gradual shift on the dial of what were people so frustrated with about ranked versus, to your point, I certainly wouldn't have said all of ranked is flawed. We need to fix all of ranked. I think it was bits and pieces of ranked. I think people were upset with the kind of the babysitting on the leaderboard, but that was a product of rating, right? I think people were upset with the rating. Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I guess we'll have to kind of wait and see what unfolds as we move forward. I think there's quite a few folks that are pretty vocal about their frustration with the new ranked system, and it's not just folks that were directly affected, like guys like Hep who are playing with a gold deck, or guys like Schnipoon and Yue who were traditionally playing with max silver decks. It's guys, Fat Jimmy is one of the great examples of a champ leaderboard player who's also saying it's broken. Yeah, so we'll have to see.
To be fair though, about the new changes, I think we should also highlight that there have been some benefits. I would say that the current system works better in the leaderboards and on the extremes. Whereas before the leaderboards were a complete mess, I would say. Like, you had people, it was too much RNG at the very top. Like, you might win a battle and get like 2 points and then lose one and you're down 20. That was not fun. So a lot of people, they just got to the top 10 in the first day of the season and then they would not play again. So that was bad design. Whereas now it's like, I mean, here the first person right now in Wild has 10,000 rating, so they've maxed out, and there's still a day to go. So that needs.
Oh, is that the ceiling? You can't go above 10K.
10K is the ceiling.
Well,
I think.
Do you think rating decay would have solved that? I mean, if you sit inactive on the leaderboard or in any position for greater than a 24-hour period, your rating just gradually starts to erode.
That would have worked, but you're adding some complexity, which I think they're trying to avoid. So the new system is objectively simpler, right? It's easier to explain, easier to understand. I think that's the main thing they're going for.
Yeah.
And the new system, what I like, it's in the leaderboard. So these people are reaching 10,000 rating because they can buy energy, and now buying energy will almost always be good for a leaderboard player, because even if you have like a 50% win rate or like 55% win rate, you're going to be gaining rating just by buying energy, even if you're not that good.
Well, there's the value of 5% again. It rears its head twice in the
I guess
episode.
so.
Well, we'll see, man. Matt seems pretty steadfast in his decision this last town hall, saying, we're going to press on with the experiments, and but yeah, we'll see. All right. Well, Hep, you got anything else to burn a hole in your pocket, man?
No, I think this was good. I think, it's great to, well, I guess, one question I have then is there, any talk about, you jumping on, a town hall and kind of, talking about what you're doing and kind of the path moving forward? I know we got to discuss it here, but, it seems like this is kind of like a big new part of the team and the game that they're adding on. So, have you talked with Matt about, or has he asked you to kind of, hey, once we have this thing kind of going, jump on a town hall and, let people know. And like we said before, the optics and let people know, hey, if you're cheating, we're already in the process of figuring it out. So knock it off before, the penalties start coming.
I think there was some mention of a town hall visit. I'm not sure, maybe, but there will definitely be some blog posts. I'll probably do it like periodically, giving updates on where we are, what actions we've taken. But yeah, that's still some time away.
Okay.
Last question. So we mentioned that the double-edged sword that presents itself as soon as the company starts making public the names or the account names of those bands. Is all that stuff visible on the blockchain? I mean, even if, is that kind of the silver lining for those folks who are looking to, huck a tomato at a cheater? Is, well, fortunately I can hop on the blockchain and do a little bit of detective work and land on who was banned.
No, you can't find out if someone is banned. Only they can find out by trying to play a game.
Yeah, because that would be on the game's interface side, right? Where they've turned off your ability to play on modern. I don't think that would be posted to the chain at all. I mean, you could say like, hey, this person was playing in, this person for the last 6 months has been playing exclusively in modern, and now they're not, and you could try
Well,
to,
I mean,
but that's not like definitive proof, right?
Theoretically, you'd be able to identify some of the symptoms of being banned, right? Like all of a sudden these assets were locked for 30 days, and you know what I mean? I feel like there should be some footprints somewhere across the blockchain. Not saying that I'm going to be investing any significant amount of time in doing some detective work. I don't really care. But yeah, just curious. All right, Syler. Well, I'd like to give you the opportunity. Is there anything else that you kind of would like to get off your chest, or speak to the community about, speak to the listeners about?
Let me see. I mean, one thing I've been thinking recently in general, like reading through the Discord and stuff, there's been a lot of negativity. I would just say, the good things about the game are, for me, the community, the experience, the infrastructure, the team. And those things haven't really changed. So I think there's still a lot of things to like about the ecosystem. Again, like I haven't really, I'm not here for the gameplay, but there's a lot of other things that the game offers, and those things are looking pretty good. Yeah. So yeah, maybe that can help some people just kind of figure out where they're at and how to approach things.
Well, I appreciate the words of wisdom. Last thing, guys, it just popped in my head, and we've seen the conversation around Grimbardoon or stats getting potentially adjusted, kind of resurface. And yeah, I found it really interesting. There's some folks that have said, I think it should be 100% expected that the team can come in and adjust stats, adjust abilities, adjust mana costs as it sees fit. after the fact. And then there's other folks who say, absolutely not. I made Grim Bardoon is a great example. Some folks invested $600, $700, $800 in a max copy. And if the team comes in and says, oh, actually shield is a little bit too overpowered, we're going to remove that, price is going to fall through the floor. And, the people are going to be screaming, the sky is falling. So I'd love to get a quick take on that perspective. I think we've also talked about here at the People's Guild with Yaba, with Call Me Tim, as far back as I think the very first episode we had Hep on the idea of adjusting immunity to be available for,
so it makes sense,
being crippled. I think that could be a much easier and less abrasive route to potentially nerfing something like Grim Bardoon. But where do you kind of fall on that range, Syler?
I think some adjustments will be necessary over time. The team tries to, go through all the different scenarios and come up with reasonable stats, but there's no way that they're going to get it perfect every time. And there's, 600 cards in the game now, something like that. So I think it's going to be necessary sometimes. But of course, the changes should be appropriate and they shouldn't devalue the cards too much. But I think, I would say card holders, suck it up. It's for the better of the game.
Do you feel like the better approach is adjusting the ability itself versus an individual card?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's more fair. I mean, I can see both sides of the argument. People would be upset, like, oh, I had to put up with Alamo Cambio for years. What a pain in the ass. And then Grim Bardoon comes along and completely ruins immunity for everybody. Yeah, I mean, I can see both sides. Hep, do you have an opinion one way or the other?
Yeah, I kind of think that they shouldn't change it. I think that, they should do, and they kind of, I think this is the kind of tack that they've said they're going to take, that there needs to be an adjustment of these things, like immunity. There needs to be different types of immunities, right? And immunities to physical damage, immunities to magical damage. It not only creates diversification in the game, it makes those skills make more sense. It gives you more abilities to add to cards, which will give you, greater depth to the game. And so I think it just needs to be handled that way. And I think the more you have these, right, and that's the thing with immunity, right? It's such a broad, wide thing, right? It interacts with so many different other skills that it can create this overpowering card. But once the things that it prevents from, right, narrows down, then you don't have that chance of one specific card becoming so overpowering. So I think they're gonna handle it that way, and I think that's the better way to handle it, because then you don't run into that thing where you're nerfing cards after people bought them. I know they've done that before. And I know they kind of changed Cripple a little bit before, which had a minor effect on it. Not enough to make Dallin worth buying, but I think that they'll I think we'll see that kind of. I think that's the way they should handle it, and I would predict that's the way they're gonna handle it, because I think from talking with Matt and Call Me Tim, that seems like what they want to do. It's. Yeah, I think, and maybe to the extent that, I don't know if you can just kind of say, well, we're not going to have 3 different types of immunity, and Grim Bardoon is now only going to have this one. I think you just got to kind of, going forward with the new sets, it's, we learned this lesson and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think longer term, the best solution has to be more thorough testing, right? I'm going to put a feather in my own cap for calling it really early that Grim Bardoon was going to be pretty game breaking, and he's turned out to be much better than I think anybody anticipated. I don't know if that's a lack of foresight from insignificant or insubstantial playtesting, or would we have discovered that he would have been game breaking and incredibly meta redefining the way that he has if yeah, I don't know. I would love to see some sort of gaming committee come into place where, I feel like it's kind of our responsibility. If we're paying Splinterlands to design a card set, why should we not be able to, offer suggestion and be part of a focus group helping to determine what is balanced gameplay. It's kind of my 2 cents.
I think there's some conflict of interest there. I think there's been a bit of a trend to make cards stronger, because, I mean, a stronger card is going to sell better, right? So it kind of has some built-in power creep. And I think if the community was making it, they would probably go the other direction and make things just in line with what we have currently, so they don't devalue what they currently own.
Get that too, but like, yeah, maybe the team, we want to, have cards be more powerful and sell more cards, but then that mindset kind of leads you to, well, but that's the thing. I think we started to see it a little bit with Rift Watchers, and I think you've seen it really with Rebellion, where it's like, well, now you have, instead of really wanting to buy all the cards because they're more balanced, there's 1 or 2 cards per splinter that are super powerful that you need to have, and you don't really need to have anything else as much, and I don't know if that's, you probably would know that better than anyone from, the Xbox data with, the percentage of Rebellion cards that are played in winning hands. Like, is it something where, yeah, if you have, you maybe only need 10 cards out of the set to really optimize your lineup?
Yeah, there are those cards for sure.
That's a really fun way to wrap this thing up. Is there some mind-blowing statistic, Syler, of, if I jam Grimbar Dune every single possible match that I'm able to, do you have a rough estimate of what kind of win percentage I'll get?
No, I don't.
I mean, I think Venka has single-handedly ruled the Grimbar Dune meta out, but it's yeah, she's the opposite extreme. She's absolutely, she lives up to her name, man. She is vile. She's a lot of fun. All right, Syler. Well, yeah, like I said, man, certainly appreciate you taking the time to hop on. I think I speak on behalf of most folks in the community that we're excited to see what you're, bringing to the table, and hopefully the team does its best in leveraging your expertise. You have been doing this for a while and quite successfully, and yeah, hopefully it's a new dawn for Xbot and for you, and yeah, excited to see what you bring to the table for Team Splinterlands, man.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great opportunity to get hired by the team. I mean, this whole last 2 years or so with Xbot and now getting hired, it's just been pretty crazy. Yeah, it's a pretty cool chapter of my life, and I'm excited to keep playing it out.
Nice.
I think we looked into our crystal ball at the very end of last episode with that very telling question of if Splinterlands comes a knocking, will you be answering that door? And yeah, here you are. Congratulations, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Hep, any final words?
Not at all.
All right, everybody. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Hopefully you enjoy the show, and we will see you guys next week. You have been listening to
The People's Guild.